television network. This is NFL Live for Week 6. Here's your host, Bob Costas.
Welcome to the NFL Live studio in New York with Will McDonough and O.J. Simpson, and we'll hear from both of these gentlemen shortly. We'll also hear from Jim Lampley and Hannah Storm, who have an investigative piece on the alleged gang rape involving the Cincinnati Bengals. It's a doubleheader day here on NBC, also a doubleheader day for Deion Sanders. The first half of that doubleheader will take place at Joe Robbie Stadium in Miami with Deion's Falcons taking on the Dolphins about a half hour from now. Then it's back to Pittsburgh for Game 5 of the National League Championship Series tonight, though we understand he has decided not to divert to St. Louis to act as a panelist in tonight's presidential debate. It's been a busy enough 13 hours for Sanders. He pinch hit late in the Braves' win last night, striking out in the 8th. Then a quick departure out of Three Rivers. We're not sure if he showered, but since he was caught looking, one would assume he didn't break much of a sweat. By the way, the Braves won the game 6-4 to take a 3-1 lead over the Pirates in the series and could wrap it up and head for the World Series tonight. A quick limo ride for Deion from the stadium to the Allegheny County Airport, a small field about 45 minutes away. The Learjet awaiting to take him from Pittsburgh to Miami, where he had 3 options on board: sleep, study the Falcon game plan for Miami, or talk to Pat O'Brien. That is not Pat behind him, but Pat was over in the corner of the screen. The plane was airborne at 1:35 a.m. for the journey to South Florida, about 1,000 miles, and then Deion will pull into the Fort Lauderdale Airport at the fine hour of 4 a.m. Here he comes. Not enough of a close-up to see if he's bleary-eyed or not. He checked into the team hotel, got a few hours of sleep, and arrived at Joe Robbie Stadium just after 11 this morning. And there is that familiar number 21 warming up just a few minutes ago. He'll be returning kicks and punts, as well as looking to blanket either Mark Duper or Mark Clayton. A short while ago, I talked to Dolphins coach Don Shula about Deion.
Great athlete, and every time he gets the ball on a punt or a kickoff return, he's just a tremendous threat.
As a coach, you've got to sympathize with Glanville's position, or in a sense, a guy like Bobby Cox in Atlanta, the baseball manager. This is a tough situation to juggle.
Well, I'm sure it is, but, you know, that's something that I don't have to deal with, so they really don't get a lot of sympathy.
Minimal compassion displayed here by Shula, but he told me in another part of the interview that he prepared all week as if Sanders was going to be there, and he is.
Well, you know, Sanders is a unique athlete, and his abilities afford him the opportunity of not really having to fit into Atlanta's defense. They're going to put him one-on-one on Miami's best receiver. You must assume that's Mark Clayton, and that's all he has to do. He doesn't have to worry about what the other guys are doing, but I don't think you can go to bed at 4 a.m. and cover a receiver of Mark Clayton's ability. I think he's going to have a long day, Will.
We will find out.
Let me tell you something, Juice. This is not about him playing against Miami today. This is about money and publicity. You know, he just went into an advertising campaign with Nike, and they're the ones that I understand that are picking up the tab for this thing. It cost $8,300 alone just for the plane. Now, if he didn't play today, he wouldn't make $118,000, and that's his game check for playing in Miami today. So that's the reason he's there.
And he wouldn't generate the kind of publicity for himself and for Nike that this 2 sports in 1 day primetime baseball game on a Sunday night is going to generate for them.
You're right.
By the way, not unprecedented for someone to go to bed at 4 a.m. or later for other reasons and still perform fairly well in the game later that same day. As we said, it's a doubleheader day here on NBC, and the early game that most of you will see is Seattle at Dallas. The Cowboys are looking to bounce back after the Monday night thrashing in Philadelphia. For more on the Cowboys, let's bring in Bill Parcells from Texas Stadium. Bill.
Hi, Bob. You know, when I was coaching, Bob, one of the most difficult things I had to do was a short week of practice after an emotional loss like Dallas had in Philadelphia Monday night. And that's Jimmy Johnson's problem here today, compounded by the fact that they had 2 weeks to get ready for that Philadelphia game. I think the emotional drain on the players and the coaches still lingers a little bit here. Talking to Troy Aikman yesterday, he said that practice hadn't been as sharp for Seattle as it had been leading up to the Philadelphia situation. Now, on Seattle's side, Kelly Stoffer out, starting quarterback, replaced by Dan McGuire, his second career start at 6'8", the tallest quarterback in the NFL. Can you relate to that, Bob?
Not exactly, but as a baseball guy, I might point out that his brother Mark will be playing later today for Oakland against the Blue Jays in Game 4 of that series. Our other early game today is in Cleveland. The Browns hosting the Steelers. Pittsburgh is 3-1 and tied for the AFC Central lead with Houston. For more, let's go out to Cleveland, and Ahmad Rashad comes aboard. Ahmad.
All right, thanks, Bob. Today marks the return of Steeler head coach Bill Cowher. As you know, that Cowher played here for the Browns as a linebacker and also started his coaching career here in Cleveland. He also said his first son was born here, so he said he has a lot of fond memories of being here in Cleveland. One of the fondest memories is of that of the dog pound. He said when you talk about home field advantage, there is no better home field advantage than they have here in Cleveland with the dog pound. He paid them the ultimate respect in practice last week as he piped in crowd noise for 2 days of practice to get his team ready for the noise that he'll face here today. Now, one of the things about practice also, Eric Green, the Pro Bowl tight end, also returned to practice. He is available today. Unlike the Deion Sanders, who shuttled in private plane from game to game, the Steelers came down in an old-fashioned bus. They're ready to play.
Yeah, that befits the traditional atmosphere of a game on natural grass in Cleveland between the old rivals, the Steelers and the Browns. Another game in the AFC Central today has the Oilers, winners of 3 straight, visiting the Bengals, losers of their last 2. That's a 4 o'clock start at Riverfront. Houston has improved itself with the recent signing of former Browns wide receiver Webster Slaughter. Yesterday, our Todd Christensen asked Slaughter if he was the missing piece in the Oilers' puzzle.
Well, I don't know if I'm the missing piece. You know, I do believe I can come in and help the offense. You know, Gibbons, I understand, has been getting double-teamed all the time. And I think with myself in there, that'll take away a little bit of that and open the offense up a little bit.
How much of a difference did it make to have the week off to get to work into the offense for you?
Well, it makes a world of difference. If we would have had to play Sunday last week, you may not have seen me, but I'm sure you'll probably see me for at least a few plays this week because I had those extra days to work it in.
And up next, we're joined by Jim Lampley and Hannah Storm as we examine the civil suit filed against 20 members of the Cincinnati Bengals.
NFL Live is brought to you by Charles Schwab and Company, offering you the Schwab no-fee IRA. By Coast Deodorant Soap, that crisp, invigorating scent makes Coast the eye-opener. And by Sharp Electronics Corporation. From sharp minds come sharp products.
Some full commission brokers are finding more and more ways to charge more and more fees, even annual fees.
Well, I've been told on the best of authority within the last 2 weeks that the Botlow Corporation, which owns the 49ers, it's in their family, has restructured with their banks in the last 2 weeks, $2 billion with a B, Bob, dollars worth of debt, and now the 49ers will not be for sale. Definitely not be for sale in the future. Stay in the family. And it's a big story in the NFL because, let's face it, in the last dozen years, they have been the #1 franchise in the league.
All right, so the 49ers are not on the market, but what players are on the trade market right now?
There's a few out there, Bob. You know, Tuesday, 4 o'clock Eastern Time is the end of the trading deadline in the National Football League. And this week, surprisingly, you heard the name of Al Toon of the Jets out there. It had something to do with making a deal for Greg Townsend, the defensive end of the Raiders. Personally, I don't think it's going to go through by Tuesday, but it could. And you also hear that Alexander Wright of the Dallas Cowboys, a very fast wide receiver, but now he's like an extra receiver for him. They're talking to the Raiders. That might come down before Tuesday, Alexander Wright going to the Raiders. And another trade that I think is a possibility, Dexter Carter of the 49ers going to the Houston Oilers, possibly for a #1 draft choice.
All right, we're back with a check on some late news from around the league right after these messages. We'll start against the Eagles despite a bruised right thigh. Alexander Wright, the wide receiver for the Cowboys, who Will mentioned earlier, is inactive today with a sprained left knee. And at Foxborough, the winless Patriots, with more bad news, an injured hip, has forced running back Leonard Russell to be inactive against the 49ers. Now, one game, Juice, we haven't mentioned, a late game, Buffalo and the Raiders. How do you think the Bills will bounce back after losing big at home to the Dolphins last week?
I don't think they're going to have any problem bouncing back. I think they were already putting that game behind them even before it was over. If you recall last year, they were running along with 4 or 5 wins, and they lost big to Kansas City. I don't think the Raiders have the offense to keep the Bills off the field.
And they won 5 in a row after that humiliation on Monday night against KC. For Will McDonough, O.J. Simpson, we'll see you at halftime with scores and highlights. So long. Okay, O.J. and Will are here as always, and we'll talk a bit more about Seattle and Dallas in just a moment with the Cowboys up 20-0 at the half. Elsewhere, in Miami, the Falcons are in front of the Dolphins, 10 to David Craig touchdown passes, each to J.J. Burden. It's the Chiefs at 3-2 and coming off a heartbreaking defeat at Denver a week ago, leading the 4-0 Eagles, who came in riding high after blowing the Cowboys out on Monday night at the Vet, 14. Seattle and Dallas in just a moment with the Cowboys up 20-0 at the half. Elsewhere, in Miami, the Falcons are in front of the Dolphins, 10 to David Craig touchdown passes, each to J.J. Burden. It's the Chiefs at 3-2 and coming off a heartbreaking defeat at Denver a week ago, leading the 4-0 Eagles, who came in riding high after blowing the Cowboys out on Monday night at the Vet, 14-3 late in the second quarter at Arrowhead Stadium. San Francisco and New England, it's 10-3 in favor of the 49ers at 4-1 over the 0-4 Patriots late in the first half at Foxborough. The touchdown for the 49ers, a 32-yard throw from Steve Young to Jerry Rice, Rice's second TD catch of the year, and the 95th touchdown reception of his career. Steve Largent leads the all-time list with 100, as you see Don Hudson, the old-time Packer great, with 99, and Rice will soon enough have the record. Pittsburgh and Cleveland, a battle of field goals here, and we have some highlights as the Steelers lead at 6-3 at the half in Cleveland. Let's roll those in, boys. I'm sure they're coming. Here they are. Bernie Kosar along the sideline. A broken ankle, of course, keeping him out of action for several weeks. Steeler quarterback Neil O'Donnell going to work on the opening drive, scrambling, and then finding Jeff Graham for 11 yards. This will lead to a Gary Anderson 25-yard field goal and a 3-0 lead for Pittsburgh. Fresh sod keeping the ground crew busy. Little shot for some of the horticulturists in the audience. Pittsburgh was leading 3-0 when Neil O'Donnell went to Dwight Stone for an apparent 17-yard TD, but the play was called back when Tunch Ilkin was flagged for holding, so the Steelers settled for a 36-yard Gary Anderson field goal, a 6-0 lead, and later the Browns got a field goal of their own, and they creeped to within 3 at 6-3. Phoenix and the Giants at the Meadowlands in New York is in front in this one. Both clubs are 1-3. It's 21-14 Giants, almost halftime in New Jersey. What about Deion Sanders?
Well, Miami spent a little time trying to take advantage of Deion's lack of sleep, one must assume, with his late arrival from Pittsburgh last night. They went after him right away with some limited success. They got a pass interference call against him, and there was another call, but they ruled the pass was uncatchable. And Jerry Glanville is trying to get their $118,000 a game out of Deion because they've used him on defense, kickoff returns, and they've even put him in on a pass play on offense. He had a 9-yard game. So Deion is playing very well.
And Will, not to disparage the Seahawks unduly, but if you were looking to bounce back off a tough, maybe even humiliating defeat from Dallas's perspective last Monday in Philadelphia, he couldn't have picked a better set of circumstances to go home and get the Seahawks.
That's right. Right now, I think Seattle's got one of the worst teams we've seen offensively in the National Football League in years. Although New England is close, and Cleveland is close. But coming into this game today, Seattle has only scored 43 points. But you look at one thing, Bobby, you look at the teams without an offensive line. You look at New England, you look at Seattle, you look at Cleveland, right? They cannot score points. They really cannot score points.
Denver having trouble with its offensive line, and until last week when they came back against Kansas City, they couldn't protect Elway, and they weren't scoring either.
Well, they score on the 2-minute drill with Elway. That's it. I mean, the rest of the game, they don't move the ball either. Every single team in the league that hasn't got a good offensive line really can't score points this year, and there's a reason for it. Because defense is now starting to dominate in the National Football League, and if you haven't got a good offensive line that can stand up against some of these linebackers that can really come and run, then you really can't score points.
Time for us to step aside. We'll welcome Gail Gardner in when we continue right after this.
We've seen so many pump fakes. That Favre kid in Green Bay does this well, but pump fakes are just to get a guy to bite, hold him down a step, and get a guy by him, and that's just a nice job.
Has the Kansas City defense been putting pressure on Randall Cunningham? You bet. 5 sacks of Cunningham, that one by Derek Thomas, although this one is recovered by offensive lineman Ron Heller. Then Dave Craig has thrown 2 touchdown passes to become the 15th player to throw 200 in his career. This one to Burden, wide open, 24 yards. The halftime score, 14-3, the Chiefs over the Eagles. They're at halftime in Irving, Texas. The Cowboys are leading the Seattle Seahawks 20-0. Dan McGuire, tough road to go. 5 of 9, 43 yards. He has been sacked 3 times and fumbled once. Halftime at the Meadowlands, the New York Giants leading the Phoenix Cardinals 21-14. Jeff Hostetler, starting in place of the injured Phil Simms, has thrown a touchdown pass. Halftime at Joe Robbie Stadium in Miami, the Falcons lead the Dolphins by a score of 10-7. And in this game, Chris Miller with the 18-yard TD pass to Mike Pritchard. Deion Sanders has played a little defense as well as offense. The Falcons lead it by a field goal. Halftime at Foxborough, the Patriots trail the 49ers 10-3. Jerry Rice has caught a touchdown pass, 32 yards in this game. And halftime in Cleveland, AFC Central Division battle. The Steelers lead the Browns by a field goal. It's 6-3. And the NFL today continues here on CBS after this word from your local station.